Hey, Angel fans, and welcome back to Halo Territory. I'm Mike DiGiovanna, former LA Times baseball writer and host of the show. I'm going to start out today with a quick question for Angel fans, but it might seem more like a trick question. What channel will you be watching your Halos on this year? Have no idea? Me neither, and the regular season is 2 months away. The Angels' TV situation right now is about as muddled as this team's plan to get back to the playoffs. But hopefully, the two guys on the show today will be able to shed some light on it. Evan Drellich of The Athletic and Bill Shaikin of the Los Angeles Times. Welcome to the show, guys. How we doing today?
Hiya, Deej.
Good to see you, man. What up?
All right. Really appreciate you both joining us. A little background on these two fine scribes. Evan covers the business of baseball with a special emphasis on the commissioner's office for The Athletic, and he's written extensively about MLB's TV situation. He has also written an outstanding book on the Houston Astros sign stealing scandal called Winning Fixes Everything. And if you haven't read it, I strongly urge you to go buy it, download it. It's a great read, especially for you Dodger fans who are still ticked off about that 2017 World Series. Bill Shaikin is the national baseball writer for the Los Angeles Times, a two-time California Sports Writer of the Year winner. And he also focuses heavily on the business side of the game. And I was lucky enough to call Shaik a colleague for almost 3 decades at the Times. Thanks again, both of you, for joining us. Evan, let's start with you. The Angels in 2011 signed a 20-year, $3 billion deal with Fox Sports West, one that paid them $150 million a year. And now they're among 24 Major League Baseball, NBA, and NHL teams scrambling for TV partners. How the heck did we get here?
People stop watching, I think is the short answer, Deej. Everything I write about, or 98% of what I write about, and I think it's true for Shaik as well, comes back down to money. And the money has just started to dry up for these regional sports networks. You know, there was a time, less than a decade ago, when the channel that the Angels are on now and a group of other regional sports networks were valued at $10 billion. And they've lost, I don't know, maybe 90% of their worth since then. People stopped subscribing to cable and TV packages, satellite. There's been some cord cutters. Some people have jumped to YouTube TV and other digital packages, but there's just fewer people regularly subscribing, which means that there's less money going to these stations, the third-party regional sports networks, and then there's less money going to the teams. And what's going on right now is that for basically the second time in a year, the channel that the Angels are on, FanDuel's networks, which are owned by this company called Main Street, are trying to pay less to the teams and renegotiate all the rights fees that they are contractually obligated to pay. We will see if any of these teams actually go back to FanDuel. Major League Baseball's taken over the broadcast for several of its teams. Right now, there's at least 7 teams that Major League Baseball itself is going to be the broadcast partner for in 2026, which, if you had said to somebody 5 years ago, hey, MLB is going to effectively be the regional sports network for, a fifth of the teams in the league or more, I think people would have thought you were pretty crazy. But that's the world we're in now, where some teams feel that they're going to get more money from Major League Baseball than they will from the traditional third-party partner. And there's a difference in the way it works, whether you're with the third-party traditional RSN or you're with MLB. A third-party traditional RSN guarantees you some amount of money going into the year. They're going to say your rights fees are worth $30 million or $40 million or $50, whatever. MLB is saying, we're not promising anything. Whatever you bring in and whatever we're able to sell, that's what you're going to get. So it's this slowly crumbling third-party regional sports network environment that the Angels are one of many teams swept up in.
Shaik, let's hone in on the Angels. Seems like they've been TV nomads now for the last few years. Can you sort of clarify how they went from Fox Sports West to Bally Sports West to FanDuel Sports West, and who knows where they'll be next?
Sure. So as a lot of things do in Southern California baseball, it all goes back to Frank McCourt. when Frank McCourt was selling the Dodgers in bankruptcy court, Fox Sports, remember they have two RSNs, Fox Sports West and Prime Ticket. And while they had both the Dodgers and the Angels, what they were really worried about was having none. What if Frank McCourt took the Dodgers somewhere else, or then their new owners did, and the Angels decided, oh, we'll go somewhere else too. So Fox took the $3 billion it was marketed for Frank McCourt, and since that was in limbo and bankruptcy, gave it to Artie Moreno and said, here's your new contract. Great. You're the Angels. You have lots of money. And they went out and signed Albert Pujols with that money. Fast forward a few years, and now Fox Entertainment, which is much bigger than Fox Sports, gets sold to Disney. And the Justice Department says, you know what? ESPN and all the Fox regional sports channels, that's too much sports in one place. So they had to sell the regional sports channels to a company called Sinclair. So now Fox is out. Time passes, and then we go to what Evan had started to talk about, which is the audience just keeps dwindling. And the money in regional sports networks is getting people who don't watch them to still pay you for them. You bought a bundle, you don't watch 53 of the channels, you watch your 4, but you pay for all 57. So that's collapsing. So as it turns out, as Evan indicated, like the Sinclair product, which was sold later as Bally's as a product name, has evolved into the Main Street product, which is sold as FanDuel, has evolved into we just don't know. So that's kind of where we stand. And the 20-year contract that looked so good for the Angels back in 2011, it's already been blown up. It's worth less than it was then. It's about to be worth less. And as Evan indicated, if the Angels end up going with Major League Baseball, there may be zero guaranteed revenue entirely.
Well, that was kind of going to be my follow-up question there, Shake. At the time, that deal in 2011 for granted, a major market team, but the second team to the Dodgers in that market, that had to be a pretty darn good deal for the Angels, right?
Oh, yeah, it sure was. And again, it was just out of desperation. If you have a regional sports network and you don't have baseball, you got nothing all summer. And Fox was looking at 2 regional sports networks with no baseball. So that was the price they had to pay.
Wow. Evan, how have major league teams, specifically the Angels, been impacted by this? We've mentioned some of the financial implications, but I assume they've been huge.
It's always money. Everything comes down to money in this world, and the exact amount of money the Angels have lost, Bill would probably know better than me, but I think 20-30% for any team that was with this company, Main Street Sports, which operates these FanDuel sports networks. At a minimum, they've lost that in the last year alone. And the way these owners think and operate, that very often will translate into, well, we're not getting the money we expected to get from TV, so we're going to spend less in XYZ areas. And often XYZ areas means, yeah, we're not signing that next reliever, or we're going to stay out of free agency, or not going to make that trade. Or at the very least, if you're a cynic, you'll say, well, there's an easy excuse for a team not to participate in a certain way. But I do think there is a real matter of uncertainty that they're all dealing with here, and not knowing what their actual TV revenue will be in 2026. Now, I want to hedge that a little bit by pointing out that any team that is with this company, Main Street Sports Group, that operates these FanDuel networks, there are 9 MLB teams that were slated to be partners for 26. They all ran back to FanDuel after FanDuel was in bankruptcy, FanDuel Sports Network, in a previous name of the company, Diamond Sports Group that Shake was talking about. They were known as Bally's back then. So they were already crumbling, and a bunch of teams looked at it and said, well, I still think I can make more going with them. And so you kind of have empathy for the position the teams are in, not knowing what's coming in, but also they chose to go back to a network that had just emerged from bankruptcy. And during that bankruptcy, MLB was by far the most vocal critic of the plan, of the projected numbers that Main Street Sports Group was saying we could hit. So it's not good all around, is how I would sum it up.
Shake, we've seen some numbers thrown around regarding the Angels. Do we know how much they've lost over the last few years, and how much they stand to lose in the next few years because of this situation?
Artie Moreno said last spring, before the start of the season, that he was looking in the $50 million a year range. That was not necessarily all because of the TV deal. But when you've got a guy who's taken pride in, running a break-even operation, that's probably not what you want to hear if you're a fan of the team. I think the bigger problem is that when the FanDuel / Diamond / Main Street / Bally's Group got out of bankruptcy, the teams made their new TV deals about the time the regular season ended last year. Not exactly, but close enough to where the teams could go into their winter baseball shopping mode with an idea of what the television revenue was going to be. The bad news is it's going to be down. The good news is at least you know what it is. This is coming up now so close to spring training that teams are kind of paralyzed. And I don't think it's just the Angels, because you don't have that certainty. You have absolutely no idea. As Evan indicated, if you go with MLB, you may have zero guaranteed revenue at this point. You can't even count on taking a discount. You may be counting on taking nothing. And that makes it really hard, certainly, for any general manager to get a budget.
Well, the Angels GM Perry Manazian has been pretty coy about his plans and for this winter and how his budget is impacted by all of this. But as we know, actions speak louder than words, and it's clear these financial losses have impacted the Angels. Their projected payroll for 2026 is $178 million. That's $43 million less than their $220 million payroll to end 2025. They did save $12 million this past winter by trading Taylor Ward to the Baltimore Orioles, but they've spent $17 million total on 5 free agents this winter. Shake, how long can the Angels continue to operate like this?
I can't say it's a whole lot different than what we've done in the previous few winters. The plan, as best we can tell, has been rush a lot of young kids into the team, sometimes with very limited time in the major leagues, hope for the best. And then if enough of them turn out, by the time the Angels are rid of Anthony Rendon's contract, the general manager can go back to Artie Moreno and say, okay, now can we start spending? But the Angels renegotiated the last year of Rendon's contract already. And as you see, they're not spending. Now, the question is that because of the TV? Is it because of other business losses? Or frankly, is it the young core has not developed the way I think the team leadership hoped it would? So if you're to look at the Angels right now and say, are there any of those young guys who would sign to a long-term contract? There's one, Zach Neto. There's nobody else that's where you could say the next time the Angels win the American League West, this guy will be part of it. So I think all those things play together.
Evan, are other teams around the league that are caught up in this situation as impacted as the Angels appear to be?
Absolutely. I talked to general manager with a different team who's also part of the Main Street Sports Group FanDuel Sports Network family. And that general manager was quite blunt that they just don't know what they can spend. And again, there are cynics or even skeptics who will say, well, they weren't going to spend anyway, and is this just a shield to avoid spending? But at the same time, if you entered this past off season, the end of the regular season in 2025, thinking this certain rights fee was coming your way, and then in late December, everything starts to crumble, you can have a little bit of, use the word again, empathy for that position. And again, hedging it against, well, you went back to a company that was financially unstable. And the reality is, there's not a great alternative at the moment. And I think we could talk more about the future here, but you're stuck between MLB or another third-party regional sports network. And in many markets, there isn't another one. And so your only other choice really is to try to start your own venture, which we've seen the Rangers do, we've seen the White Sox do it. Nobody's lighting the world on fire by doing that. And so it really becomes everybody's just trying to get by until some sort of dam breaks and you get a longer term solution where everybody doesn't feel like they're always on pins and needles.
That was my next question. What are the immediate plans of these teams, especially like the Angels, who are impacted?
The immediate solution is just make as much money as you possibly can, and that you can argue that that's short-sighted in the sense that there is one other option that people have, which is to go over the air. Instead of having your games be on cable and satellite. What if you went with less money coming into you, but reaching more people? There's always this trade-off in the land of sports television between reach and revenue. You'll reach more people if you're basically giving away free over the airwaves, but you'll make less money, at least in the short term. It doesn't seem like any Major League Baseball teams are going to aggressively pursue over the air. So in the short term, and I'm talking about 26, 27, 28, you're trying to maximize what you can. And then 28 going into 29 is a really key year in baseball. The national media rights deals in baseball, so that the contracts that allow NBC now to host the Sunday night game, the Fox Saturday games, all those national contracts, Fox with the World Series, expire after 28. And so 28, there's going to be this renegotiation of national deals. What the league would like to do is essentially sell more local inventory. So most teams have, let's say, 130 games, 140 games that they give to their RSN. You sell more of that to national big streaming companies that might pay more. And also, not only just take more games national, literally have some of these major streaming companies potentially become essentially the RSN. So ESPN, starting next year, has the rights. Well, they have the rights now, but we're not going to see this take off until next year. But any team that MLB is handling the broadcast for, right? Those 7 teams, there might be more. ESPN will soon stream those on its services. And so you already have a major streaming company that's saying, you know what, we'll just act like the RSNs used to. And there could be big money in that. And the question is, can baseball get its media rights system in order? There's changes that would have to be made to who controls the rights potentially. There's changes to revenue sharing between owners, and that's something that actually has to get collectively bargained with the players. There's a big shift that can happen in the next couple of years. And the interesting thing will be, can Rob Manfred pull it off?
Shaikin, can baseball pull that off? And I got a hunch there's going to be some roadblocks to a deal like that with teams like the Dodgers, the Mets, and the Yankees, who have these ridiculously humongous TV rights deals in their local markets.
No, absolutely. I mean, the pitch of putting everybody's rights into one bundle and going out, whether it's ESPN or YouTube or some technology we've not even heard of yet, and saying, you can have all the games. That sounds great in a way for a fan, because there are weekends now when you're like, okay, the Angels are on Fox one day and ESPN the next. You need Amazon Prime to follow the Yankees. Evan mentioned, NBC is involved now. Boy, wouldn't it be great if a fan could just get up and say, whatever team I want to watch, I'm just going to go to this one place. It doesn't matter where I am. There's no blackouts. That sounds great, but you need every team to be there. So if you're the Dodgers, for example, and you're making hundreds of millions of dollars a year in television revenue from your Sportsnet LA deal, at a time a lot of these teams are making nothing or next to nothing, you're going to say, competitive disadvantage for me. So, Rob Manfred, what are you going to give me if you want the Dodgers rights in that package? And that's sort of what they're working for. There's all sorts of things they could do. Maybe they adjust the Dodgers revenue sharing. Maybe they give Dodgers TV rights in Japan, where they're obviously such a huge attraction already. Who knows what? And again, as Evan pointed out, a lot of that comes back to collective bargaining in the end. Can Major League Baseball do it with something less than 30 teams? I mean, probably. It may not be as attractive if you don't have your marquee teams, but if you're looking for a template, it's what Major League Soccer did. They went to Apple, and every game went to Apple, and you had to subscribe to Apple if you were a Major League Soccer fan. And it was great. It's one place to go. There wasn't the kind of financial interest in watching Major League Soccer that there would be in watching Major League Baseball. So maybe that would pay out. But again, We don't know. It hasn't been tried. MLB thinks it's the pot of gold. It may or may not be.
Evan, is there enough time this season for teams to get these deals done? Is there a chance any of these teams gets left out in the cold?
I don't think there's any chance. Certainly, MLB projects full confidence that everybody will be broadcast somehow, some way. And we haven't had a situation yet where truly people have been left out in the dark in this run of it. In 2023, the prior version of FanDuel Sports Network, when it was under Bally and Diamond Sports Group was a parent company, they dropped two teams, it might have been three baseball teams in the middle of the season, Diamondbacks and Padres, and that's when MLB first stepped in. So one way or another, people are going to be able to access their games. It is possible that if you have kind of a last-minute decision here where some team is leaving FanDuel for MLB, when somebody goes over to MLB then has to negotiate all the different carriage agreements, meaning MLB goes to the cable company and the satellite company. In some of these markets, there's a lot of different little cable companies. And is it possible that, one of those deals isn't quite done on time? Yeah, it's totally possible. My understanding is that MLB, and we've seen it, does have good relationships, standing relationships with the major cable companies. And so it would be, I think, very unlikely that any team that goes to MLB wouldn't have a deal in place with, whatever, Charter, Spectrum, go down the list. But again, the longer this drags on, the less time you have to sell. You have less time to sell streaming packages. Every team that goes to MLB, you can pay probably about $20 a month, and you can bypass signing up for a bundle and just get what they call direct to consumer. You can get your team's games just through that subscription. But you don't want to start selling that on opening day. You want to start selling that now. So I think in the next week here, it just would be surprising if this drags much into February. And the big question is, can FanDuel find more cash? Can they find a buyer, whether it's DAZN, spelled D-A-Z-N, or is it somebody else that can kind of come in and keep this thing standing up? And we're going to find out. The history of this is that some teams, when now Main Street tries to renegotiate, some teams stay, some teams go. And if I were a betting man, and thankfully I'm not, that would be my guess as to what happens here, so long as that company remains viable. There's at least a non-zero chance that Main Street Sports Group, after the basketball and hockey seasons, decides to wind down and basically fold.
Wow.
And we'll see. We'll see if that actually comes to pass.
Is there a best fall? Go ahead, Shake.
I was going to jump in. The teams have pretty much asked Main Street, like, hey, by the end of this week, we got to know. And we don't want to know how much of a discount you're giving us. That's the bad news. We're already used to the bad news. We want to know how you're going to guarantee that we get paid that money. So if you decide to go bankrupt again, we're not stiffed on even that little bit of money you're giving us. And if they don't get an answer by the end of this week, my suspicion is just about everybody goes MLB, because I don't think the league is going to encourage teams to take an offer where you don't even know if you're getting all of the money in this bad offer.
Wow. Well, that was going to be my closing question for both of you guys. I want you to finish this sentence. It's opening day 2026. You can watch the Angels game on Shake. What do you got?
I think probably MLB will put together a package, because if they're serious about needing to know this week, that gives them, a month and a half to get it up and running. And they can do that. As Evan indicated, they've had plenty of experience with these other teams by now. So build with something is going to be there at the end of the season versus take some money from an entity you don't know whether they're going to be there at the end of the season.
Evan?
I've spent enough time on sports talk radio to know that I'm better off taking a counter position here. And I actually, this is speculative, and I want to put out this is speculative on my part. But I think it's somewhat telling that they are waiting. The fact that they have not just said, screw this, we're out at this point. And we expect some teams have basically said that, and they probably want to make a collective decision, make one announcement all at once. But it tells me that they would prefer that FanDuel still exists and that they could get their so-called guaranteed rights fees. And so for the sake of the argument, I'll say that somehow, some way, FanDuel is still around come opening day, and I think teams want that. I don't think teams want to go to MLB because they would have done it a year ago. They would, they still like that guaranteed money. So I'll say the opposite of Shake. They're on FanDuel come opening day.
I'll just say a wild card option too is that for the other team in Anaheim, the Ducks, the hockey team, they're on free streaming. They're on a service called Victory Plus, which I think the Texas Rangers are also in on. So you can watch every game and you don't have to pay anything. And they're trying to gather as much possible, what they call reach, the greatest possible audience as they can, and try to sell advertising based on that. They also have a number of games that are on local over-the-air TV in Channel 11 and Channel 13. So I wouldn't be surprised if the Angels have at least talked to the Ducks to see how that works. And now that the hockey season is well underway, are you making money from that? Is it feasible? Does it seem like, there's a long-term path there? But in the end, I don't know that that's the route they're going to take.
Well, that'll do it for this episode of Halo Territory. I want to thank Evan Drellich and Bill Shaikin for joining us. Really appreciate your input. Please like and subscribe. And we're going to try to put together a mailbag here at some point. So if you want to leave some questions on the Halo Territory X site, please do. Until then, we'll see you next time on Halo Territory.